And I will say good evening and welcome to this OTF Connect session. It's our first week in 2018 back to OTF Connects. So we're really excited to welcome you all here. We have lots of newcomers tonight and lots of returning OTF Connects fans. So we're really happy to have you all here from across the province. I'm really happy to welcome Tina Zita as our presenter tonight. I think Tina and I have shared a job title. I worked in Waterloo as a technology support teacher, and I think Tina does something similar in her board. She'll tell us more about that. She and I have met. I don't know if Tina remembers this, but we met. I don't even know if you were aware of this, but we met at the conference in Niagara Falls in November. I was in a session with you, and we had some nice chatting that went on during that discussion. Anyway, I'm looking forward to this. We've introduced wellness as a new area for webinars during this season, and we're excited, and we're getting some great feedback already. So, Tina, thank you for putting this together, and I will give you a welcome and turn the mic over to you.
Hi, folks. Good evening. I'm super excited for our chat tonight, and it really, our hope really is that it is a chat, because I'm no expert in the field, but definitely a topic that seems perfect for this time of year, as well as all of the conversations that have been happening around technology, a digital age, and what well-being means. And it's nice to see all those folks saying hi on the side. So just a little bit about me. I am a modern learning resource teacher with the Peel District School Board. Oh, sorry. Probably because I have my hand over my microphone. Is that better, Kim? Okay, cool. Sorry, my bad. So I'm a modern learning resource teacher, which means I help 40 schools in innovating in their program, anywhere from kindergarten to grade 12. So it is the coolest job out there, really. I get to play all day. This afternoon I was playing with microbits and some friends in a communications class, along with a robot, and that was pretty cool. So maybe we'll just pause for a second. Is that a bit better, Lisa? Sorry, same headset that we usually use. Hopefully it clears up. I'll try to speak slower. Maybe I'm just rushing through. Awesome. So some folks are hearing. Okay. Alrighty. Sorry, folks. Want to make sure this sounds good. The irony of all of this is that I probably do have a social media problem. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I usually don't share Instagram, but I wanted to connect back to that because Instagram probably is a place that helps me in my well-being and self-regulation, especially the link to photography. But we'll come back to that later. So feel free to connect with me tonight or after the event in the chat. I'm always up for a conversation. So I thought I'd share a little bit of how we ended up on this topic. So, like I said, I probably am not the picture of well-being and self-regulation sometimes, but my last master's course, I thought I should push myself and try something different. So I signed up with Jack Miller for his course around spirituality and education, which was a course all focused on mindfulness. So a wonderful experience to just be with a group of 20 individuals that were passionate about education, looking at how we could bring mindfulness in, from shared meals to art strategies and more. So on top of it being a really beneficial learning experience for me, I think the biggest piece was the learning that I took away. So Susan just dropped 2 pieces in there. One of the ones was that I really struggled with some of the strategies. So if you want some entertainment, you can read that Growth Mindset blog post. We actually had to meditate daily for 6 weeks. And the first week, smooth sailing. and then the next week you're supposed to increase time, and I went completely belly up. I did not enjoy the experience at all. But that's when I realized an app could really help me out with that whole process, and that there were different ways that I could get into that meditative state than maybe the traditional meditations that folks are used to. And it led me to really look at a few things at the end of the course. And one of those was really that piece around holistic education. And that as we're exploring, we really understand that we're not just teaching the academic learner, but we're teaching that whole learner, their mind, body, and soul. So if you've never checked out Logan LaPlante's TED Talk, he really challenges us to think about that piece of helping kids see themselves as healthy and happy and contributing. And thankfully, I'm glad somebody else struggles with meditation sometimes. It really was one of those pieces, especially once I went up to 10 minutes. I thought I was going to punch the wall. It was not my style. But as I went along, it was funny to kind of find your own rhythm and your own strategies. So this evening, really, we want to have a conversation. We know this is a new topic for many people. It's something we're still trying to deal with, that idea of self-regulation, the idea of well-being, and then putting that digital lens on it. So we're hoping as the evening goes along that you'll pipe in, that you'll share your strategies, your ideas, your questions. We'll pause at times throughout the evening to actually get your questions, but feel free at any time to drop them into the chat. It's been really cool with folks to kind of be able to jump in or jump off the ideas that you're sharing. And if you have experienced an OTF session before, especially with me, we're trying to push the envelope a little bit tonight with including you even more in that conversation. So please bear with us as we try something new, and we're really excited. So let's get started. We want to get to know a bit about you. So in the chat box, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what board you work for and any other fun details you want to share? Maybe you want to share an emoji that summarizes your day. Lisa, you have to read Dan Harris's book about 10% Happier. His book, I should have read his book before I started meditating. Nice to have you with us, Melanie. Glad to hear your day was fantastic. Happy birthday, Melissa. Melissa, where's your, so internet-based high school, everybody learns online then? Sounds super cool. Multiple exceptionalities. Sounds like another cool piece there. Cheryl and I have been chatting. It's awesome to see you guys. So many different districts. It's awesome. I'm sure you had a busy day, Annette. But a great day. Those are good ones. I was kind of chuckling to myself before I started because everything today kind of took a extra little bit of energy. So it's kind of funny we're having this topic. Wow. Melissa sounds super cool. Lisa, it's always great to see PL folks in the crowd. Caitlin, it's awesome to see that growth mindset piece come out. It's funny as I was putting the presentation together to really see where all those pieces fit together. We have all these words we use, especially when it comes to that emotional piece of education, but they all do overlap, don't they? The bots are fun, aren't they, Vanessa? I need to get myself one. I always go to the teacher librarians and make them let me play. Susan, that sounds terrible. All right. Well, a few folks are typing, so we'll give you maybe one more minute. So great to see such a diverse group. Kim, we're going to look at both. So, great question. And when we were designing the session, we were trying to see which way to focus, and that's why as we go through, we're going to talk a bit about the strategies we use, the strategies that work for our kids, but then at the end, we're also going to share some tools that we think you could use with your learners. So hopefully that will give us a bit of everything. Oh, Jan, you'll have to tell us more about that Inner Explorer. That sounds awesome. Okay, so we have another question we'd love to check out, just to help me out right after I tell you this part. So we just wanted to go just through the flow just to make sure we kind of have that sense. We're going to spend a little time right now getting to know each other and that piece. Then we want to kind of talk about what does it mean when digital tools and well-being come together. I know there's a lot of articles in the news right now about the dangers of digital tools. From my standpoint, I sometimes go the other way, so we want to have that conversation. We want to share some of our own strategies we use, whether they're personal or strategies we use in the classroom. And then I have a couple different apps I'd like to share, and then we'd like to see what you guys are using so that we kind of can build that toolbox that we can leave with from tonight. So if you wouldn't mind either using the clip art that you used earlier on the map, just to put it in one of the four corners, whichever one you feel represents you. So whether it's primary, junior, intermediate, senior, you're doing a bit of everything, or if you're more working with the big folks. All right, so it looks like a lot of primary, junior folks, and a group of intermediate, senior, which is awesome. I have an app for each of you guys, which I'm hoping you'll really enjoy. For those two sides, a bit of everything is great. No worries, if you can't get the clip art on, always feel free to drop it into the chat box. Thanks, Melissa. All right, we'll give you a couple, 30 more seconds there if you want to add to this page. Great, Sarah, Sherry. Kindergarten, awesome. I love the primary years. That's where I started. Yeah, that's right. All right. Our next question is kind of, may seem silly, but one of the biggest mindfulness activities that I enjoyed was just taking that moment to write gratitude notes. And I've seen some really cool ideas of kind of having that shared sense of community by having a grateful wall. So I thought maybe we could do that tonight just to get to know each other a bit better. So if you want to use the text option in your toolbar, I'm going to see if I can use the little pointer here. So you have this little text option here so that you can add to our page to tell us what you're grateful for. Glad to have you with us, Tammy. So a lot of people grateful for their family. I don't think I always felt that way about my three brothers when I was younger, but definitely now. And our health, definitely. I miss, I don't have my own dog. I used to borrow my brother's, but he's living with another family now, so I definitely miss that. it's funny to look back on the opportunities you have in life and to kind of look back on it with gratitude, isn't it? Absolutely love this. Thank you guys for sharing. 4 beautiful seasons. I have to say I would be okay with no winter. Or a shorter winter at least. It's a little too long for my liking. Kayaking. Lisa. Cross-country skiing, it's the slushy, gross Toronto piece that I don't like, I guess. It was very pretty in PI to see all the snow on the ice. Too cold. All right, we'll give you another 30 seconds. Glad to have you with us, Amanda. Oh my goodness, Lisa, I can't imagine. Looked like an awesome trip to Quebec, though. All right, so many great things that we're grateful for. And hopefully that helps us set the tone as we go forward. And I'm grateful for all of you guys being here tonight. So one of the pieces that I think I always struggle with is that there's so many different definitions of self-regulation and well-being out there. And as we start this conversation, we really want to see if we can get to a common ground, I guess we could say, just around what we define self-regulation and well-being to be. So if you want to use that text box again, or if you want to put it in the chat box, it's up to you. If you want to choose just one of those words, and how would you describe it in 6 words? I know that's hard. If you want to pick 6 random words that come to mind, that's cool. But we're just going to see what words kind of stand out to us with self-regulation and well-being. That's okay, Susan. I know it's been interesting. I facilitate AQ courses for OISE as well, and our conversation has actually been all around self-regulation this week, so it's been interesting to see that crossover. In Korean, red brain and blue brain definitely came up. It's funny because I know a lot of our schools are using zones of regulation, but I definitely understand the red brain, blue brain a bit easier. I wonder if folks are finding kids understand that better. Remaining in control of our emotions, matching emotions to a given situation. That's another one of those misconceptions often, isn't it? That's always kids that are overexcited or hyper-aroused, but there's also that under-aroused element with some of our kids. So while Stuart Schenker is your hero, yeah, definitely Korean. Now I'm just going to drop something in. Sorry, Susan, I didn't put this before. So we have a poster for self-reg from Stuart Schenker's site, in case you want to take a look at that as we're making our definitions. And for well-being, the ministry actually released a paper. I don't know if anybody's checked it out. You can give us a thumbs up if you have, on the Ontario Wellbeing Strategy. So I've just linked the image first, because I think it would kind of provoke this a little bit, but I'll link the full report on the bottom just in case you're interested. So as we look at those pieces under well-being on the bottom, self-care, self-love, self-awareness, feeling of overall contentment with life, a state of wellness, awareness. I think that was the biggest piece for me as I was doing that master's course, was I don't think I ever really took the time to reflect on my emotions, which sounds silly. We often think we do. But there were a couple moments in particular in the course where I realized how taking that moment to pause can really bring that awareness and help me kind of readjust and recenter. And it makes you look at your students in a different way. Calmness, little stress, good health. Thank you guys so much for doing that. That's awesome. So many great pieces. Did the links make anybody, is there anything that you would change after checking out the links? Just a question to reflect on. You can drop it in the chat if you want. So as I was looking at that piece around self-regulation and well-being, it really got me into those definitions. So Melanie, the physical aspect, yeah. I think those 5 different domains for self-regulation, I think we always think of that emotional state, but there definitely is those different pieces. Definitely Lisa. Caitlin, that's awesome. Cool. So one of the things I noticed, hopefully it's okay, we went to the next slide. One of the things I was noticing as we were scouring through different definitions for well-being, mindfulness, and self-regulation is they all came back down to that word of balance. With self-regulation, it's coming to understand what calm means. With mindfulness, it's taking that moment to pause, be present, and find that sense of calm. And even with well-being, it was coming to that idea of our emotions and our stressors all being in balance. And that was that other word that kept coming to mind as I was reading through and checking out different resources was that idea of stress. So as much as it's about balance, it was about us keeping stress, and I don't want to say under check, because I love how Stuart Schenker often points out that not all stress is bad stress. But really that idea of coming back to that balance of calm with the stressful lives we lead, but also the stress that our students experience. And when I think of social media and fear of missing out and all of that jazz, I wanted to say FOMO, but I don't feel like I'm cool enough to say it out loud. I think it really brings us back to that idea of balance and stress. So our hope for the rest of the evening is that we come back to those 2 pieces. The lens you take for our chat can be any one of those 3, but we're hoping that we can keep it coming back to those 2 words of keeping stress in balance and finding that sense of balance. Such good chat in the chat box. Thank you guys. So one of the things that also made me think of a digital age is a lot of times we talk about fostering those 21st century competencies in our learners. So some folks may have checked out the ministry's discussion paper on the 21st century global competencies. And in that discussion paper, they actually outlined 6 kind of competencies, a lot of competencies there, 6 competencies that are necessary for 21st century learning. And the one that really stood out to me was learn to learn. So when you look at the 6 competencies, many of them are very similar to what we've heard before with 21st century skills of creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking. And over time, we know that full and added citizenship and character education. So these definitely are a development off that. But one of the areas that was added was learning to learn. Now, in the framework that we're going to post in a little bit, it's interesting because they changed it to self-directed learning, but I loved learning to learn. Because when we look at 21st century learners, one of the biggest skills that they need today is to be able to drive their own learning. And to drive their own learning, they need to be able to know themselves as a whole human and to really be able to self-regulate their own needs, and whether it's in any of those 5 categories. When we talk about growth mindset and resiliency, being able to adjust their emotions accordingly, and also how they interact with others. So I love that last piece when it talked about emotional intelligence to understand self and others. I'm glad you, thank you for agreeing with me, Lisa. We need to email the ministry and tell them that they're wrong. So if we're going to post another little framework that the ministry has published as a follow-up that explains that 21st century competency a little bit more. But I think a lot of times when we talk about self-regulation and well-being, it's kind of separate from that digital age 21st century competencies, but I see it as so essential as we move forward in helping our learners be those lifelong, as John Seeley Brown and Douglas Thomas mentioned, arc of life learners. To be that, we need to have that opportunity to really understand ourselves and be able to balance our emotions. So here comes the tough question of the evening. There's a lot of chatter around digital tools and addiction and student depression, etc. So I thought we'd start with a little value line activity, if you guys don't mind. So if you've ever done a value line, sorry, Lisa. So if you've ever done a value line in person, you have a statement. So our statement is digital tools support well-being. And on one end, we have strongly disagree. So you're like, no way, Jose, that's not possible. And on the other end, you're like, why would you even ask me the question if you strongly agree? Now I'm guessing you probably feel like you fall somewhere in between. So you're just gonna put your little clip art that we've been using tonight or mention it in the chat box. Where do you feel you, and people choose right in the middle. There you go. So put clip art like folks are doing, just where you feel you fit. And nobody's committing to this, so no worries, we won't, you can change your mind later. So Kim, you are very right. It definitely depends on the tool, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I love that term, Lisa. That's cool. I haven't heard it yet. Amber, that is a perfect example of how we use a tool. And that's going to lead into our next little bit, our next little conversation for sure. Trump and Twitter stresses me out just even hearing about it. So we definitely all feel like there's a lot of us in that middle ground, eh? So what I thought before we dive into some of the tools is really to have a little bit of a conversation around the technology, the tool, and what those pieces kind of mean. I'd love to hear your input because it definitely it's always hard to see it from your own perspective. Melanie, because I feel like very much like you, to me, it's interesting. Instagram to me is that tool I use to calm down. I definitely follow less people on Instagram, and I follow a different crowd, so it's more of a creative group, I guess, of people that aren't necessarily educators. So it is definitely something I can lose myself in, where I find Twitter sometimes is something I do more for work. But it's interesting how we use even social media in different ways. All right. You guys are like, Twitter stresses you out. Corianne, it can definitely stress us out. Melissa, that's what I felt. It's an interesting note you made about Facebook because I grew up in Europe as a kid. So one of the hardest parts about growing up overseas was having friends in a country for a few years and then leaving. But being able to connect back on Facebook, it kind of gives you that feeling of home. And that really leads into our next point. And that really is the fact that it's a tool. I think we keep, the hard part with technology is it is so much more advanced than maybe the tools of the past. When we look at paper and pencil or a textbook, or we were even talking today about early societies and their tools of using their jugs and their utensils. that tools have evolved over time. And we know that this smartphone that we hold is so much more powerful than maybe the tools we've seen in the past, but it really just is a tool. And for me, that was really the biggest piece I found, or the biggest learning, was from a clip by Jesse Brown. It's very old. Some of you may have seen it before. So he isn't an educator, but he had this really great clip where he talked about the fact that if we don't recognize that technology is a tool, we sometimes see it as magic. And when we see it as magic, we see it as something that's done to us instead of something that we control. And as we have this conversation tonight around self-regulation, well-being, and these digital tools, I think that is kind of the key piece. And you guys have all brought that up, so it was like you guys knew the presentation was coming. And that really, thanks for that link there, Peter. So it really is one of those pieces that I keep trying to reflect on, is how can we help learners, especially when we go back to that 21st century competencies of learning to learn, how can we help them see that this is really just a tool? There you go, Melanie. It is so hard though, right? Especially knowing today that the way they design apps and some of the social media tools, that they definitely are pulling at our strings. The other thing that came to mind as we looked at it as a tool was an illustration that my instructor gave to us during my master's, and it was a great course on mobile and ubiquitous computing. And he said, today we live in this digital age. So in the past, information was trickled down upon you, or technology was trickled down upon you with a watering can. Somebody would come and pass it on. And then in the age of Google, we were floating around in a boat and we could ladle up information whenever we wanted. But we've gotten to the point with digital tools that we're swimming underwater. Even when we think we turn our phone off, we have this access to technology in our car, in the street lights, in our fridges. So we're always immersed in this environment. And again, it's finding that idea of self-regulation, well-being, and that balance while these tools are all around us. Yeah, and that's it. We have to know where that difference is and where those pieces come to play. So I'm trying to catch up on these conversations. You guys are doing such an awesome job. Love seeing all the chats. Amanda, and I think that's a great point about adults and social media. The other thing is we often put ourselves on what kids are doing with social media, and I think they almost have a different culture, and we're going to kind of touch on that in a little bit. It is ironic that we're all immersed in it right now. So one of the things that I started reflecting on was just the strategies that I use. Because I think as we go forward and we're trying to help our students, especially for those of you guys in the intermediate and secondary panels, how can we help students articulate and see the different ways that they self-regulate? And it was kind of funny because I could see in different places when I work on my sense of balance that some of them use technology and some of them don't. So one of the things I do is I sketch note. And this is really just out of a necessity. So we have a lot of meetings in my job, and I was never used to really just sitting and having to focus in a meeting. I should never admit this on something that's being recorded. So I actually saw someone sketchnoting, and I started picking it up. I watched Catherine Madden's Skillshare course, and then I started practicing. So now I find that when I'm sitting in a meeting, I can actually pay much more attention because I'm sketching out what's happening and listening to kind of the key ideas. So I remember a lot more of the meeting. I'm able to share it on Twitter afterwards. But also I can stay more on task and make sure I'm listening a little more attentively. It's funny though, because I've been in meetings where they say put your device away. So that's always been a bit of a struggle, is people thinking maybe I'm not paying attention or doing other things. But that's where that accountability on Twitter has been nice. The other thing I like to do is go on photo walks. And I find it's funny because with photo walks, I don't necessarily use my phone. I often use my camera. So I love to walk, but I often can't go walking without something. So either I need to bring my camera to focus in through that piece, and sometimes I need to actually use my phone just so that I can drown out the sounds. I live down on in the west end of Toronto, so I'm lucky. I have the lake right across from me, and I never realized how much just water in itself calms me down. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. You can give us a thumbs up or a happy face. Oh, Melissa, that's terrible. It's hard to help people see what our self-regulation strategies are. So when it came to water, that was kind of a big aha moment for me. And I even realized how technology plays different roles there. When I'm in PI visiting my parents, I'm glad you feel the same way about water. Chris and Amanda too, cool. So in PEI, when I'm on an 8-mile beach all by myself, no problem to kind of self-regulate and focus and be mindful. I find in the city, I definitely need to bring my phone with me. But then there's little strategies I use to make sure that I'm focused on the walk and focused on the water instead of focused on the Twitter ding. So I put my phone into Do Not Disturb so that I don't hear those notifications, and I often put music on because it lets me kind of focus in on the walk and make sure my mind doesn't go wandering. But then I realized there's those moments that are just, like Lisa mentioned before, times where I turn off my phone. So even though I can cook maybe 3 meals, baking to me is more of that mindful activity where I really focus in on the task and I can just be in that zone. And as we mentioned earlier, for me, one of those strategies I found during the course as well was notes of gratitude. So taking that time to just write gratitude notes and share them with the people that I know. So I used some of the photography I took, and I actually would pause and do the old school handwriting bit with that piece. But we actually want to take a bit of time and see laundry and baking. Laundry, Cyril, I don't know about that one. That is amazing. I wish I could say laundry worked for me. We want to see if we can collect some of those. Oh, I put it there. Okay. We want to see if we can collect some of your strategies now. So what are some of your strategies? Chris, laundry works for you too. Wow. I love that water's your home. Ah, interesting piece, Kelly. That's it. That's the hard part I find with all of these conversations, especially with kids, is that for some kids, their strategies are going to be completely different than the strategies for other learners. It kind of speaks to that need in our learning environment to have those different spaces. So we're going to look at a couple apps later on that will help with focusing and phones, because I know that was a big piece for a lot of our secondary students, especially when they have their cell phones on them all the time. And that yeah, it's funny to see how we have different ideas. Hiking in the woods, being in nature. It's funny, photography made me appreciate nature more. I don't know if I could say I was a nature person before, but once you focus in and see those details, it's hard to ignore. Peter, photography too, cool. We should have a poll to see who uses laundry, who feels laundry is a strategy for them and who doesn't. This is amazing. I would have never thought of it. And that's a great point. We're going to chat about that in a minute as well. Andrew Campbell wrote a great article around self-regulation and cell phones and their need to be in the classroom, because how will students learn how to self-regulate without it? So we'll chat on that in a minute. We're just capturing a couple more. Oh, yeah, I was thinking of that, Annette, as I was looking at a lot of folks posting their different stats and details around wellness. especially physical wellness, online, and how the phone can kind of help guide you or challenge you. I wish it could get me into running. I haven't got there yet. But my Apple Watch definitely makes me take a pause, which I don't always do when I'm caught up in the busyness. Gardening, another one that I'm not good at. Interesting, Kim. So Kim, Kim, did you say high school? I'll catch up with you on that one. Yes. Yeah, it's a hard one. Trying to come to that understanding of how we can really maximize those devices. And that really leads me to the next little bit. And Peter, I want to check out that Flickr group hopefully in a minute. So one of the things that I was thinking of as we were chatting as well was just my nephew. So I have a nephew that's just in grade Cool. Love that chat. Keep that chat coming. So when I look at my nephews, they're 13 and 14 right now. So Michael started grade 9 and Luca is in grade 8. It was kind of interesting because we went on a road trip this summer and I wanted to throw their phones out the window sometimes. But it's interesting when you're spending that long length of time together in a small space that you really start seeing how they use the device. And that was one thing that stood out to me, was really that difference between how I see some of the tools and how they see some of the tools. So it was interesting to see how they use Snapchat and Instagram and really the many pieces of their social groups that come into play in those areas. So where we maybe in the past, and I'm dating myself, so hopefully people forgive me, but where we would kind of print out that picture that we frame and put up in our room, and then we would put together a little photo album. Snapchat was that photo album. Whenever we had a great moment, they would start capturing pictures. That's kind of how I knew it was a good moment. There were a lot of moments that never got onto Snapchat. And then there was the moments that were truly epic, and those moments made it to Instagram. And understanding a bit of that culture definitely made me look at it a little differently. So sometimes I don't get the idea of posting pictures to Instagram and taking them off if you don't have enough likes, or only having one picture on your profile like my nephew does. But then figuring out how we can help them self-regulate in that place of, in that social network. So there's still that element that we have with, especially when we look at our middle schoolers and our high schoolers, where they've always had that dependence on the peer group. And how can we help them find the strategies that work for them within that peer group? There's so many different pieces that are kind of coming out when it comes to this conversation about how we can maximize the devices. So hopefully, Susan, if you don't mind, if we can drop in Andrew Campbell's article. I think his article is a great read if you're, especially for the high school friends in the group. Definitely not necessarily strategies, but he talks about how if we want to help kids self-regulate with cell phones, we probably have to start some of those conversations in the classroom, which I think is always a hard conversation because it's easy to say, but it's harder to implement. So hopefully we can find some of those strategies. The interesting one for me was the call for Apple to make changes. I don't know if anybody else heard about that one. So there was a lot on the news on the weekend around Apple making changes to their device, having investors ask them to make changes to their device so parents can actually better manage their children, especially young children's use of technology. And what's ironic with the whole call is that Apple actually does have tools built in, like guided access, where you can limit the amount of time a child's on the device. Anybody used guided access before? Yeah, it seemed to be the article that just kept popping up lately. Yeah, and that was funny for me too when I listened to my brothers. They're in their 20s, and they kind of use Facebook back and forth. Like, they have no problem closing it down. Or I think that would stress me out, just even the thought of closing it down. Susan, it's definitely that idea of purposeful and engaging use of the device. One of the things that really stood out to me too is if it is a tool, we also have to help kids build that toolbox so that they can make those choices for themselves. And that kind of speaks to our conversation tonight as well. Michelle uses it in her kindergarten class. Yes, it is amazing for kindergarten kids, especially that kid that keeps going to YouTube and finding the makeup videos. And being able to have that timer on it. I've seen a lot of kids with special needs as well, if you're using it, want to help them kind of guide their use and have that timer piece on. Cool, Robin. I like the auto shut off. That's cool. Tammy, that's it too. So we talked, sometimes people don't always enjoy the use of guided access, but to me it definitely can help with that independent exploration where we can leave out those iPads and let them kind of guide what they're exploring, while also making sure we manage kind of where they end up. It always is funny to read those articles too about the tech industry, but I wonder how many of them don't have devices at home. And again, that idea of there's no computers or no technology help us with making those good choices of using it as a tool. And definitely equity is always an issue that we still deal with, isn't it? So many small choices we make. So I'm just looking at our time and looking at our exploration. I'm wondering if it's okay, we're going to just switch this up a little bit. We'll come back and maybe we'll, as our summary, just think of what digital tools and self-regulation wellness looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And I had a couple tools that I thought I would show, just share, and then maybe you guys can jump in with the tools that you're using. So we'll just show one at a time. I kind of pulled out 5 different ones. I wanted to make sure we had tools that range from the early years to the big learners. And they're all quick tools that we could kind of use to help us and find that sense of balance. If that's okay with folks, if you just give me a thumbs up or an emoji or a yes. All right. All right, so Susan shared the links there on the side, but we'll go through them one by one, not one-on-one. We'll go through them one by one, and we'll take it from there if that's okay. So we're going to try, and hopefully the technology doesn't fail us. We're going to try to share my iPad screen, and hopefully you don't see the dirty laundry in my room. All right, can folks see my screen? And you see one of the apps sitting there right now. And you all know my password. All right. So I had a couple, yay, I know, it worked, woo. So we have a couple different apps that we wanted to share. And hopefully you feel like these fit into our conversation tonight and that they're useful. So we're just looking at that bottom row there. One of my favorites, which is just a quick app, is Noisily. And it may be that I'm really fixated with noise. So Noisily is both a website as well as a Chrome extension and an app. For some reason, they make you pay for the app, but the Chrome extension and the website are completely free. And it's just a quick tool that lets you make your own background sounds. So as you can see, and I'm sorry you can't hear it, as you can see, we kind of have our different elements, so I can mix my own sound pieces. So I have that great nature background sound to kind of set the tone. The other cool thing in the corner here with the app is I can actually put a timer on. So we're going to cancel that. And so if we were just even using this as an entry tool at the beginning of the day, and we want to give them those 10 minutes so that we're not going straight into schoolwork, 10 minutes to kind of say hello, get settled, chat with their friends, we could have that music set and ready to go, and it will just play in the background till we're ready to get started. So I've used it a lot. Oh, Peter, that's awesome. So I've used it a lot when I need that background noise, and I know it's terrible because for me, it definitely, hearing the chatter or hearing conversations gets me distracted, but I know for other kids, something like this may put them over the edge. So I know those noise-canceling headphones are a big piece. Definitely, Lisa, it's a nature background noise generator. So as you go through, if you use the app as well, it actually will have different features like just being able to tap on productivity or relaxation, and it makes the mix for you. So you don't even have to think about what you want. With the app, you can, and that is one of the pieces, Kim. So when we look at the app as well, you can create your own favorite background. So if students need that background sound and you don't necessarily want them listening to YouTube, because maybe that distracts them, it may be a tool for them. Kim, and when I'm reading your post, it's kind of interesting to think it's a resource I actually looked at for the AQ course for this we're looking at, was Stuart Schenker talking about kids needing to understand what calm does feel like. And for them to be able to regulate their behaviors and their needs, we sometimes have to help them understand what calm can be. If they've never experienced it, they may not know that they need to adjust. It was an interesting article. I'll email it to Susan so we can include it in the resource collection if you want to check it out. So, noisily. If you like to just give me noisily. Sorry, we'll put them back in here. We'll try to drop the links in maybe as we go along. There you go. So anybody found an app like Noisily that they like? I know one of our teachers in one of our middle schools found Chill Hop. It's classical music set to hip hop. So it's super cool. I've been using it as background music a lot as well. Kim, I think we're all working on it. We're all on that learning journey for sure. And that's where I think, as we look at all these tools, it's really knowing your community. If you have a big group of learners that do need that music, can we play it in a certain area of the classroom? I think our default is always to play it over, and I don't know, Melissa, if you have the same situation, we have that set up with a projector and the sound is attached to the projector, and we kind of have that whole room blasted sound. So with one kindergarten classroom, we actually put the sound in their small parts play so that it worked with their exploration area, their inquiry that they were working on, but also the sound was contained to that area if it helps the learners. I don't know if that makes sense. Peter, I love that that works. We're going to have to try that out. All right, if folks are okay, we'll check out another app. Okay, so that was Noisily. I think we'll go through the next one really quick. How many people already use Go Noodle? And this is more that I just was shocked that it was on there, so I wanted to tell somebody, and you guys are all the people I get to tell tonight. Thanks, Susan, for putting the link in. So Go Noodle is a favorite in a lot of, Cyril, there you go. Go Noodle is a favorite in a lot of our classrooms across Peel, and across Ontario, I think for sure. One of the things that really shocked me was if you go to channels, they actually have a channel called Flow, which is all mindfulness clips. Anybody use them already? Awesome. Cheryl, which one was your kid's favorite? Chris? Love to hear your favorite too. I know the kids all have favorites. And Jillian too? So Kim, Go Noodle is, I'm going to play one just in the background while we're talking. Go Noodle is a website that creates brain breaks for kids. So it's a free website you can sign up for, and they have a variety of different active videos. Some of them are more dancing. There's Massimo who does yoga, which is pretty entertaining. And then they have some other collections like this one that's around flow and meditation. So they're all focused on mindfulness. And as you check out the beginning, it kind of sets the tone. It's kind of a guided meditation with that visual support. Cheryl used the rainbow one. Jillian used the rainbow one. Lisa, you did a better description than I just did. All kind of goofy is definitely a great way to describe it. I usually go to Massimo and Flow just because they're ones I can handle. Oh, love that, Cheryl. So we just thought we'd drop that in if you haven't checked it out already. Great tool, it's free, you don't have to pay for it, and students, as they work through the different exercises, actually look at leveling up. So there's some of that gamification piece in. Awesome. All right, so the next two apps are two of my favorite apps. We actually shared them recently with our family of schools that are focusing on self-regulation and well-being, especially as we look at those modern learners. So the first one is the app that I actually used. I mentioned earlier at tonight's session that I used an app to help me with my self-regulation. So I use Breathe, and I was always looking for something for kids. So last fall, they just came out with Breathe Kids. Anybody use Breathe Kids? Thanks for the suggestion of Cosmic Kid Yoga, Chris. No, that's awesome. So Breathe Kids, again, there's some free options. Of course, all of these apps kind of have that premium feature where you pay for more, but you have enough with the app to kind of get started. What I really like is that they use the emotions that you're feeling as a filter to get to different breathing activities. So if I look to find a mission, I actually have to identify how I'm feeling right now. So for our elementary friends, a great way for them to kind of articulate that emotion. So if I'm angry, it's actually going to get me to think about how I'm feeling. So I'm feeling really jealous right now. I don't know why. Jealous of those people in warm climates. And maybe I'm a little nervous and I'm a little worried, so I can launch. And it's actually going to go through and find breathing activities that will help me because I'm feeling that way. So as you go through, they're just little guided walkthroughs. Again, I wish you guys could hear it. And as they go through, there's a little animation. Maybe we'll do the fish one because you can physically see it a bit better. So with the square breathing, the adult app has some of that gamification. It doesn't do the same thing with choosing your emotions per se, but maybe I just need to update it. What I loved about the app is that it kind of kept track of what I was checking out, and it would give me little stickers to remind me that I was on the right track. So it had that gamification piece. I'd have to switch to my phone, but maybe we can get the link and drop it in here just in case you want to check it out. When we were talking to our climate team about apps, there's so many out there. Headspace is kind of the go-to app for older learners or adults. I know some high school students that use Headspace, but that's the app there. But it looks like they may be going more from that emotion end now too, which is great. It's a great filter and a great connection to a lot of the conversations we're having around that well-being, self-regulation, and finding that balance with our emotions. Kim, I don't know about Go Noodle in high school, but I'm trying to think what other options. So the next app we're going to look at is one specifically I've been suggesting to high schools because it has more of that high school feel. But there has to be a good active tool out there that would help you out, that would be similar. If not, we need to get into business and create that tool. Headspace definitely is a paid-for app. That's the other reason I did go to Breathe, just because Breathe was an app that was free. Oh, Melissa, that's awesome. I guess if you go through and check what you're, what's kind of exploring. Headspace is a similar app to Breathe and some of the other meditation apps. I think Headspace is more gamified. Could people agree with that? It's more personalized because you have that account. Thanks, Annette. Oh, Kim, just such a great point about those body breaks. One of the apps, Kim, I'm wondering, just thinking out loud here so people can pipe in and see what they think. I wonder if some of those 7-minute circuit apps would be a good brain break for them for their movement, especially as kids are just sitting and they're stressed and they're kind of tensing up. So one of the apps I've been using is called Carrot. It's crazy. They pretty much scream at you. You need to try all these different workouts, but you don't really need any materials, so you can do it anywhere. Another one is the 7-minute 7 Work-It or 7 minutes. I'm kind of wondering if that would give you that Go Noodle feel where they walk you through the exercises, but give it more through that high school, older, cool folks lens. Thank goodness mine doesn't. My Apple Watch does not track my stress level. Mine does remind me to breathe, though. It's interesting. Kim, you're not hijacking. This is what the conversation is about. Lisa, Carrot is definitely good, and the Carrot workout app is the one that she kind of makes fun of you and says funny statements. So I can see it definitely being entertaining for the high school kids. I'll see if I can find the link here for you, Kim. All right, we'll drop that right into the chat. Cyril, and that's a great point too. Carrot in general is free. It's a wellness app. I have to double check with the fitness app, may have a cost attached. And that's where I see some of these tools working as well. When we look at some of these apps, could they work as a tool to help us transition between activities? All right, so this one is for you, Kim, and all of the older crowd, the intermediate seniors, and I think it could work with junior as well. With primary, you definitely want to go to 360 and not the goggles per se. But New York Times has a great VR app, and you can use this for anything. It's not really a mindfulness or well-being app. They have fantastic videos that are great for empathy. So there's actually one series on New York Times VR that looks at displaced, which follows 3 kids that have been displaced by war, one in Senegal, one in Ukraine, and one in Syria. So a really great app for many reasons, but one of the things we were looking for, I'm just going to close this for a second so I can show you here, is how could we really help some of our older students with that meditation. So just like we were chatting a bit before, that guided meditation where somebody just talks to you doesn't always work. So this meditation was actually one of the few ones that I didn't struggle with. I was actually surprised I made it to the end. So one of the things that they have in New York Times VR is a collection of 4 meditation journeys. It's always funny to see which ones work for different people, and I think for our crew, many of us probably would pick that first one, which is Meditate by the Ocean. One of the things I love about this is if with their cell phones, you could actually give them a Google Cardboard and let them use their headphones. So it would really give them that kind of chance to truly escape from the space. I think it's often hard for us to do some of the wellness activities when you know your friends are all looking at you, especially in intermediate and senior classrooms. So with this, we can kind of tackle that. And hopefully it works for me right now. Replay. Maybe it just does not want to cooperate. Let's try one more time. Sorry guys. I'll have to show you one of the other ones. It was too smooth, messing things up here. So we'll show you with sunrise. So at the bottom you can see that cardboard. That's what I'm suggesting if you're in the classroom, to kind of give them that chance to go to a corner and just relax. Even maybe in some of our mindfulness rooms, I know a lot of high schools that are creating rooms where kids can kind of go to find that balance. We're going to just go to 360 here. And it does walk you through, so they do a guided meditation. So as it comes up, what I love is that I have that chance to move. So a lot of times when we hear about meditations, we really think we have to sit still and not move and be quiet. But as they're walking and going through the guided meditation, we can actually, and I'm not very steady here, folks, I'm sorry. So we can actually look around, take a look, and kind of explore as we're in nature and taking that pause. So an app that I think could really show kids that their device can help them find that sense of calm. And like I said, this is not my favorite one. I definitely prefer the water one. I don't know. We'll take one more stab at it to see if it will cooperate. Nope. It's not gonna do it. So you'll have to check it out. So again, New York Times VR app, this is not the only focus of the app, but as you look through the collection, you're going to be looking for the meditation journeys, and there's those 4. So just as you go through, you're going to look for the meditation journeys on the list of different VR experiences that they have in the app. Okay, so we have one more tool that I wanted to show you. Very cool, Jan. So Jan's sharing a tool that she uses. Jan, you mentioned that the whole school, it was purchased for the whole school? So daily 5 to 10 minute audio guided mindfulness practices. Very cool. That's awesome. Thanks for adding that to our conversation. So the last one is one that I still struggle with, but I thought I'd share it because one of the questions I got last year, sorry, I won't rotate, was around cell phone use. And especially around the time right now where it's very stressful and kids just seem to go to their phone, and that social element between messages and their Instagram and their Snapchat, etc., just adds that stress. So how can we help them focus when they have these devices with them all the time? And that's where the Pomodoro timer really comes in. Hey, Susan's dropping that in there for us. So one of the ones that I added to the list, one of the 2 links, is actually a Google web extension. And it's kind of funny. Every time I open a website, it shows up as a big red screen. And I can put a 25-minute timer on, and it will reward me and thank me when I take those 25 minutes and give me 5 minutes to take a break. So that's kind of the idea with Pomodoro. So 20 minutes, 25 minutes on task, 5-minute break. Now, I find that a little hard to motivate me. So this one kind of turns it into a bit of a game. So again, when we're looking at our junior, intermediate, and senior kids, or if parents are saying they're really always on their phone and you're trying to look for an app, it may be one to check out. I don't believe it had a cost attached. I should have checked, I'm sorry. But we'll check it out really quick. So you can actually see that I failed my mission earlier. That is awesome. So I actually can have different projects. When I'm ready to focus, I just tap on my rocket launcher, and it's asking me for 25 minutes to stay focused. So even if I go out of this app, after a few minutes, it's actually going to tell me that I need to get back on track. So if I don't go back into the app, it's actually, my mission will be aborted and my rocket ship will explode. Oh, a blogging timer. I never used it like that. That would be a great idea. So I thought when we're looking at those quick tools to kind of help us out and build our strategy or build our toolbox, the Pomodoro timers seem to be a great option. But this one to me seemed a bit more appealing to some of our high school kids as they're trying to stay on task, or maybe just something we can offer to them. Has anybody used a Pomodoro timer before? I love Lisa's suggestion of using it as a blogging timer, because I feel like I sit in front of the screen and just keep rewriting half the time. A great way to kind of stay on task as we're exploring. And having that visual timer, I think, helps us sometimes. Lisa, do you know what the funny part is? I can never make it to 25 minutes. So obviously I need this app as well. One day. I like the pop-up notifications because it kind of acknowledges that kids, adults, will not necessarily always stay on task. And especially with our phones, we tend to be flipping back and forth. So having that chance to kind of have somebody say, hey, you went and checked that ding that popped up, but get back to your Pomodoro timer. Cool. I can't believe how fast our time is going. The chats have been amazing. Just as we come towards the end of our session, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now so that you don't see my iPad anymore. I'll just switch back over. And I'm just thinking to end our time off, maybe we can, we'll do this little sketch note. I'll share my screen again. So we had a couple ideas. One was to take that time to just kind of note what we think we want to take away from our session tonight. But maybe you guys can make some suggestions of something you're going to try or something that really stood out to you. And I'm going to try to sketch note it in the next 5 minutes. We'll see if this works. So let me just share it again. Melissa, I've never heard of that one. So we'll put this on here. We're going to share this back up. And I'll bring my sketch note up. Thank you for your patience. And we'll delete these fun guys, or maybe we'll try to see if they fit in and then we'll take it from there. So what's kind of your takeaway from tonight? What's one thing that maybe you're going to try, or one thing that you want to remember? A big aha? Just going to take it out of this here.
Feel free to pick up the microphone, use the talk button.
Oh, cool. So you're going to use Pomodoro with your English classes. Love that idea, Melissa. So let's see if I can kind of draw a tomato. I'm not sure that looks like a tomato, but we'll try there. It looks more like an apple. Better write Pomodoro underneath it. So many pieces to help us kind of stay focused and on task, even with those timers. So Pomodoro is a strategy. So that when you put it into the App Store, Kelly, you're going to get a lot of different apps. So the one we looked at was, I put in Pomodoro and Rocket Ship. It usually comes up. Focus is an app that I know I have friends and colleagues using. They love it. So if you're looking for another one, the extension was Pomo, just P-O-M-O. So the New York Times is another one we're going to check out. Love that. See if we can get that on there. We'll put that on our list. Yeah, Lisa, I feel like that's a big piece. And I don't want to sound cliche with the expression, but I think that's a big piece for kids, isn't it? For them to understand that we go through that experience too, right? We struggle with self-regulation and we need to find strategies. Corianne, Pomo. Pomo was actually for Google, so it's a Chrome extension. If we want a couple, I can pull a couple and email them to Susan tomorrow, just so you have a few different apps that we've gone through. Peter, I love that you created that little curated list. That's awesome. You'll have to let us know what your kids think, which ones kind of stood out to them, which ones they enjoyed. That's my very poor attempt at a file folder. Maybe it kind of looks like one. Oops. This isn't going to be our prettiest sketch note out there, but that's okay. Carolyn, glad you're going to check out Go Noodle. Oh, love that idea, Amanda. I wonder if they could even make a mix that helps, a mix that identifies how they're feeling. You know how some of our friends don't always know how to articulate how that feeling sounds, and based on the nature elements, could we better understand their emotions? That's a great idea.
I love that.
I'm just going to put music. Our music piece. Cool, Corianne. Thanks for dropping in those links. I'm glad you like those visuals and Breathe Kids. I loved how Breathe Kids has a variety of options as well. So from activities that help you kind of calm down, but also activities that invigorate you. So kids know that breathing isn't just something I do when I am crying or getting really upset, but that it's also something I can do to help me get excited when I'm not feeling so excited. Awesome. So many great ideas. Corianne, I'll check it out as Susan wraps us up, if that's okay. So I'll leave you a little note in the box. And Caitlin, I'm using paper 53 to sketch note. Cool. So yeah, that's another piece, isn't it? And that self-regulating and well-being isn't always about being happy or being calm, but it's more about our awareness and then being able to adjust or do what we know we need to do to help us get to that state again. When we can stretch and when we need to pause. And making those good choices. Folks, it's been so great to chat with you all tonight. I feel like I've learned just as much from each of you as you might have from our conversation. And I'm so happy that you took the time to join, and thank you for that active participation. It was absolutely amazing. It's always a little nervous when we're using this format and it's not that back and forth chat maybe that we're used to in a classroom or with our friends, but it's been great to learn with all of you tonight. And feel free to connect at any time. Susan, did you have something you needed them? Oh, there you go.
I did. I was just grabbing that last thing before I did.
Sorry, rushing you on.
That's totally okay. Tina, first of all, I want to thank you for putting this together. I know that wellness is a bit of a new area, and the whole idea of self-regulation is a conversation that's happened a lot among kindergarten and early years educators, but it's really moving now through the whole spectrum of education. And so putting together a brand new presentation on a topic that's fairly new and current in education is a challenge. So thank you so much. I think you did a wonderful job. And you also inspired a great dialogue tonight. So all of you who were here tonight, we had a great group and a wonderful conversation, very rich. Lots of questions, lots of answers among you, and lots of sharing, and it just made for a pretty vibrant conversation. So thank you to all of you for coming tonight and for participating, and Tina for leading us in such a rich discussion. I'm going to stop the recording now and then talk a little bit about some feedback that OTF needs. But once again, thank you everyone, and it's been a really wonderful night.